The birth of night vision. For most of human history, darkness meant silence. When the sun fell below the horizon, the battlefield belonged to confusion and fear. Soldiers could march, but they could not fight. That limitation defined warfare for thousands of years. In the middle of the 20th century, everything changed. In the 1930s, research from the early television industry produced a new invention, the image tube, a device capable of converting invisible infrared light into visible imagery. It was a breakthrough that allowed humans to see what had never been seen before. The United States Army immediately recognized its potential. By the final years of the Second World War, it had developed the M1 sniper scope, one of the first functional night fighting systems. This early design was what engineers called active infrared. It relied on a separate illuminator to flood the area with invisible light. That light reflected off surfaces, passed through optical lenses, and struck a photocathode that transformed photons into electrons. Those electrons were then accelerated toward a phosphor screen, creating a faint, ghostly green image. Although heavy, short-ranged, and power-hungry, the system achieved something extraordinary. For the first time, darkness could be pierced. The night itself had become part of the soldier's arsenal. By the Korean War, American engineers had already begun miniaturizing these devices for snipers and vehicle crews. Even then, troops discovered that fighting under artificial night vision demanded new tactics, stealthier movements, different camouflage, and a complete shift in how night patrols were executed. But understanding how this technology truly works requires a closer look at the science behind it, the invisible world of light that surrounds us every night. Night vision begins with the electromagnetic spectrum, the full range of light energy stretching from long radio waves to short, powerful gamma rays. Human eyes detect only a tiny portion of that spectrum, the narrow band we call visible light. Just beyond red lies the near-infrared region, a part of the spectrum invisible to the human eye but rich with energy. At night, it carries almost 10 times more ambient light than the visible range. Moonlight, starlight, and even the faint glow of the atmosphere emit this energy constantly. Night vision devices harness it. Photons enter through the objective lens and strike a photocathode, releasing electrons. Those electrons are accelerated, multiplied, and projected onto a phosphor screen, which converts them back into visible light. The result is the distinctive green image seen through the eyepiece. That green hue isn't arbitrary, it's functional. The human eye can distinguish more shades of green than any other color, giving the clearest contrast possible in low light. This ability transformed military operations. During modern conflicts, U.S. troops used infrared lasers and illuminators to mark targets visible only through night vision. To the enemy, the battlefield was pitch black. To American forces, it was clear as day. With the science established, engineers turned theory into practice. What followed was the birth of the first true generation of night vision devices, tested, refined, and proven in war. In the late 1950s, engineers built the first light-amplifying image tubes that worked using only ambient light. This became known as Generation 1 night vision. The U.S. Army fielded the AN/PVS-2 Starlight scope during the Vietnam War. Inside it, 3 image intensifier tubes were connected in series, each amplifying the signal of the one before it. The result was brightness up to 1,000 times greater than the human eye could achieve. For the first time, soldiers could see without the telltale glow of an infrared spotlight. The scope ran entirely on onboard batteries and allowed observation and targeting in complete darkness. It was still large, expensive, and cumbersome, but it proved 2 crucial principles. First, that passive image intensification worked, and second, that the night could be fought on its own terms. Generation 1 gave birth to the age of true night warfare. But progress did not stop there. Each new conflict brought new requirements, smaller devices, sharper images, and better performance. That demand gave rise to the second generation of night vision and a remarkable leap in engineering. The 1960s introduced one of the most important inventions in the history of night vision, the microchannel plate, or MCP. Imagine a wafer of glass filled with millions of tiny angled channels. When an electron enters one of those channels, it collides with the wall, releasing more electrons. Each of those new electrons strikes again, producing even more. This chain reaction, called cascaded secondary emission, multiplies the signal thousands of times. By placing the microchannel plate between the photocathode and the phosphor screen, engineers created a smaller, brighter, and more efficient tube. The design reduced size by roughly 40% and required far less power. These advances produced the AN/PVS-5 goggles, the first truly practical head-mounted system. Each eye received its own image, providing realistic depth perception and amplification up to 20,000 times. The PVS-5 also introduced a new concept, binocular fusion, combining two images from slightly different angles to improve spatial awareness. For pilots and helicopter crews, this meant smoother navigation during low-altitude flight and safer landings in complete darkness. For the first time, aviators could fly under starlight, and ground troops could move and fight freely through the night. It was a revolution in tactical awareness. The next decade would test this new capability in one of the most daring and difficult operations of the Cold War, an event that exposed both the potential and the limitations of night vision technology. Operation Eagle Claw. On April 24, 1980, the United States launched Operation Eagle Claw, an attempt to rescue 52 American hostages held in Tehran, Iran. It was one of the first large-scale missions planned entirely around night operations. The plan required Navy helicopters and Air Force transport aircraft to rendezvous at a desert landing zone known as Desert 1. Pilots use AN/PVS-5 goggles to navigate, guided by infrared strobes planted by covert teams. But conditions were brutal. Massive sandstorms swept across the region, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Several helicopters were forced to abort, and one collided with a transport plane during refueling, killing 8 servicemen. The goggles were not to blame, but they revealed their flaws. A narrow 40-degree field of view caused tunnel vision. Cockpit lighting interfered with image clarity, and pilots had received limited training in night vision flight. Eagle Claw ended in tragedy, but it became a turning point. It proved that night operations were possible, and that the tools for them had to be redesigned from the ground up. From those lessons emerged a third generation that would finally allow pilots and soldiers to dominate the night with unmatched precision and reliability. In the mid-1980s, engineers introduced Generation 3 night vision. The key breakthrough was the gallium-arsenide photocathode, a material far more efficient at converting light into electrons, particularly in the near-infrared spectrum. This innovation allowed goggles to operate under the dimmest starlight. The AN/AVS-6 became the standard for aviators, mounted directly to helmets with improved peripheral vision and a flip-up feature for quick transitions between dark and light. For ground forces, the AN/PVS-7 offered a compact binocular design that projected one intensified image to both eyes, making mass deployment affordable. Generation 3 tubes also incorporated a razor-thin aluminum oxide ion barrier film, only about 30 angstroms thick, to protect the photocathode from ion damage. This extended operational life from roughly 2,000 hours to nearly 10,000. Comprehensive field tests showed that Generation 3 improved detection range by up to 50% and reliability by 5 times over previous models. It became the global benchmark for night vision performance. These improvements weren't limited to soldiers and pilots. For the first time, armored vehicles, drones, and surveillance aircraft integrated night vision cameras, linking crews and sensors across the battlefield in real time. Night operations became a synchronized, multi-domain capability. Yet technology never stands still. Even as Generation 3 devices reached perfection, engineers were already looking ahead, toward lighter systems, sharper images, and a wider field of view that could mimic human vision itself. The panoramic vision. By the 1990s, night vision technology entered a phase of refinement. Manufacturers standardized tube designs, reduced weight, and introduced white phosphor models that produced grayscale imagery for better contrast and comfort. Engineers also removed the ion barrier entirely, creating filmless and thin film designs. These captured more light and delivered greater clarity while maintaining durability through improved vacuum sealing. Soon after came fusion systems, hybrids that combined image intensification with thermal imaging. These advanced goggles detect both visible light and heat, revealing targets hidden in shadows, smoke, or camouflage. However, one major limitation remained: the narrow 40-degree field of view. To overcome it, American engineers designed multi-tube panoramic systems. The AN/AVS-10, introduced in the late 1990s, fed each eye with 2 image tubes, creating a 95-degree panoramic field. Later, L3 Harris perfected the concept with the GPNVG-18, the now famous quad nods. These 4-tube goggles became the defining tool of modern special operations forces, providing unparalleled situational awareness and depth perception. Panoramic systems also changed training itself. Operators learned new scanning techniques, muscle memory adjustments, and depth compensation exercises to adapt to the expanded view. A reminder that technology evolves only as fast as the people using it. Used in high-risk missions, including the operation that eliminated Osama bin Laden, these systems represent the pinnacle of analog night vision. Lightweight, durable, and capable of turning total darkness into daylight clarity. After decades of innovation, the United States achieved what once seemed impossible: absolute dominance over the battlefield after dark. This mastery of the night remains, to this day, America's secret weapon. America's dominance at night was only one piece of a much larger system. That technology operated within a vast command network built to coordinate every soldier, ship, and aircraft across the globe. We already explored that structure in our detailed breakdown of the U.S. military forces, showing how each branch, command, and region worked together to project power anywhere on Earth. It revealed how organization, not just technology, made the American military the most capable force in history.